I will never have grandchildren with that woman. End it now, or lose your inheritance, Mrs. Chen had commanded 6 years ago. New Year's Eve, her penthouse party. 50 guests. Her son and his approved wife, no children, after 5 years of trying. Mrs. Chen sighed dramatically. Perhaps grandchildren aren't meant for me. At 11:58 p.m., the elevator doors opened. Abella stepped out in a $30,000 gown. 3 children in sparkly New Year's outfits ran ahead of her. They spotted the family portrait on the wall. Look! There's Daddy! And there's Grandma! Mrs. Chen's champagne glass exploded on the marble floor. Jason's wife screamed. The countdown began. 10, 9, 8. Her only grandchildren were here, and they were black. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, subscribe to the channel and let's get started. You moved the orchids. I specifically said white orchids on the left side. Move them back immediately. Margaret Chen stood into the center of her Park Avenue penthouse. She wore a black designer suit. Her pearl earrings caught the afternoon light. She pointed at the flower arrangement with one perfectly manicured finger. The decorator nodded quickly and moved the flowers. It was December 30th. Tomorrow night, Margaret would host her annual New Year's Eve party. 50 guests would arrive, business partners, community leaders, wealthy families from Connecticut and Manhattan. Everything had to be perfect. Margaret walked through the massive living room. Her heels clicked on the marble floor. She checked every detail: the crystal glasses, the champagne bottles, the catering menu. Nothing escaped her attention. "Mother, I'm here." Jason Chen entered through the private elevator. He was 34 years old. He wore an expensive gray suit and carried his briefcase. He kissed his mother on the cheek. The gesture was formal and quick. "You're late," Margaret said without looking at him. "I'm 10 minutes early, Mother." "That means you're late. I said 2 o'clock. It's 2:10. Jason did not argue. He never argued with his mother. He set his briefcase down and walked to the windows. The Manhattan skyline stretched before him. Buildings and people and cars. Everything looked small from the 42nd floor. "Jason, are you listening to me?" "Yes, Mother." "I need you to review the guest list again. Make sure the Whitman family sits near the Tanaka family. Mr. Tanaka is investing in our Boston property." "I'll take care of it." Margaret studied her son's face. He looked tired. His eyes had dark circles under them. "You look terrible. Are you sleeping?" "I'm fine." "You need to take better care of yourself." "What will people think?" Jason turned away from the window. His mother stood with her arms crossed. She looked at him the way she always did, like he was a project that needed fixing. "Where's Sarah?" Margaret asked. "She's coming later. She had a hair appointment." "Good. She needs to look perfect tomorrow night. The Zimmerman family will be here. Their daughter just got divorced. I don't want Sarah looking sloppy next to her." Jason said nothing. He walked to the kitchen where caterers were preparing sample dishes. He picked up a small piece of salmon and ate it without tasting it. The afternoon passed slowly. Margaret gave orders to everyone: the florist, the caterer, the musician who would play piano during cocktail hour. Jason stood nearby and responded when his mother spoke to him. At 4 o'clock, Sarah Whitman arrived. She had blonde hair styled in perfect waves. She wore a white cashmere sweater and diamond earrings. She kissed Margaret on both cheeks. "Margaret, the flowers are gorgeous." "They're acceptable," Margaret replied. Sarah walked through the penthouse, touching things. She adjusted a pillow on the sofa. She moved a candle 2 inches to the left. "I think we should change the music selection," Sarah said. "Classical music is boring. We should have jazz." "Classical music is elegant," Margaret said firmly. "We're not having jazz." Sarah's smile became tight. She looked at Jason for support. Jason looked at the floor. "Whatever you think is best, Margaret." For the next hour, Margaret and Sarah discussed the party. Which wine to serve first? Which guests were most important? Whether the temperature in the penthouse was correct? Jason sat on a chair and checked his phone. He was not really looking at anything. He just wanted to appear busy. At 6 o'clock, Margaret dismissed them. "Go home and rest. Tomorrow will be a long day. Sarah, make sure you wear the navy dress I suggested. Not the red one." "Of course, Margaret." Jason and Sarah rode the elevator down in silence. They walked to Jason's car without speaking. Sarah got in and immediately checked her makeup in the mirror. "Your mother is impossible," Sarah said. Jason started the car. "She just wants everything to be perfect. She wants to control everything. There's a difference." Jason drove through Manhattan traffic. Sarah talked about the party, about which guests she wanted to impress, about what jewelry she would wear. Jason heard her voice but did not listen to the words. They reached their apartment building in Midtown. It was a luxury building with a doorman and a marble lobby. Jason parked in the garage. They took the elevator to the 18th floor. Inside their apartment, Sarah went to the bedroom to change. Jason poured himself a glass of scotch. He stood by the window looking at the city lights. 6 years ago, Jason lived in a different apartment, a smaller place in Brooklyn. He was dating a woman named Abella Williams. She was a nurse at Mount Sinai Hospital. She had warm brown eyes and a beautiful smile. She made Jason laugh. She asked him about his day and actually listened to his answers. She did not care about expensive restaurants or designer clothes. She loved him. They dated for 3 years. Jason was happier than he had ever been. He planned to propose to Abella. He looked at rings. He imagined their future together. Then one night, Margaret called him to the penthouse. "Sit down, Jason." He sat. "You need to end this relationship with that nurse." "Mother, her name is Abella." "I don't care what her name is. She is not appropriate for this family." "I love her." Margaret's face became hard. "You think you love her, but you're confused. She is using you for money." "That's not true. Abella doesn't care about money." "Everyone cares about money, Jason, and she is not one of us. She will never fit into our world." "What does that mean?" Margaret looked at her son coldly. "You know exactly what it means. Break up with her tomorrow, or I will remove you from my will. You will get nothing. No money, no properties, no position in the company. Nothing." Jason stared at his mother. "You can't be serious." "I am completely serious. Choose her or your future." Jason left the penthouse that night feeling sick. He drove around Manhattan for hours. He told himself his mother was wrong. He told himself he would choose Abella. But the next day, Jason met Abella at their favorite park in Brooklyn. "We need to talk," he said. Abella smiled at him. She was wearing scrubs from her shift at the hospital. She looked tired but happy to see him. "What's wrong?" she asked. "I can't do this anymore." "Do what?" "Us, this relationship. I can't continue it." Abella's smile disappeared. "What are you talking about?" "I'm ending this. We're breaking up." "Why?" "Jason, what happened?" "It's just not working." "That's not true. Everything was fine yesterday. What changed?" Jason could not look at her face. "I'm sorry, Abella. This is over." He walked away. Abella called his name. She asked him to explain. She started crying. Jason kept walking. He got in his car and drove away. It was the worst thing he ever did. Now, 6 years later, Jason stood in his expensive apartment holding his scotch. Sarah was in the bedroom. His mother was planning her perfect party. Jason had everything he was supposed to want. but he felt empty. That night, Jason could not sleep. He lay in bed next to Sarah. She was already asleep. Jason stared at the ceiling. He thought about Abella. He wondered where she was, if she was happy, if she ever thought about him. He fell asleep around 3 in the morning. He dreamed Abella was calling his name. The next evening, December 31st, Jason returned to his mother's penthouse. The party had already started. 50 guests filled the rooms. Everyone wore expensive clothes and drank expensive champagne. A pianist played Chopin in the corner. Margaret moved through the crowd like a queen. People smiled at her. They laughed at her jokes. They complimented her success. Jason stood near the bar. Sarah was across the room talking to her friends. They were laughing about something. Jason checked his watch. It was 11:58. 2 minutes until midnight. 2 minutes until the new year. The private elevator doors opened with a soft sound. A woman stepped out. She wore an emerald green gown that fit her perfectly. Her dark hair fell in curls around her shoulders. Her brown skin glowed. She was absolutely beautiful. Jason's heart stopped. It was Abella. 3 small children ran ahead of her into the penthouse. They had curly brown hair and light brown skin. They looked around with wide, excited eyes. Then they saw the large family portrait on the wall. They pointed at it, and they screamed with joy. "There's Daddy! There's Grandma!" The entire room turned to look at the children. 3 small kids stood in the center of Margaret's penthouse. They pointed at the family portrait on the wall. The portrait showed Margaret, Jason, and Jason's late father, Thomas. "Daddy!" one of the boys shouted again. He was jumping up and down. "That's our grandma!" the little girl said. She clapped her hands. Nobody moved. 50 guests stood frozen. The pianist stopped playing. The only sound was the shattering of crystal. Margaret's champagne glass hit the marble floor. It broke into 100 pieces. The sound echoed through the silent room. Jason's face turned completely white. His hands started shaking. The champagne glass he was holding tilted. Liquid spilled onto his expensive suit. He did not notice. "Jason?" Sarah grabbed his arm hard. Her fingers dug into his jacket. "Jason, who are those children?" Jason could not speak. His mouth opened, but no words came out. The 3 children ran across the room. Their small feet made soft sounds on the marble. They were laughing and excited. "Daddy! Daddy! We found you!" The youngest boy reached Jason first. He wrapped his arms around Jason's leg. "Mommy said you were here!" The other boy hugged Jason's other leg. The little girl grabbed Jason's hand. "Hi, Daddy! I'm Zoe!" Sarah screamed. It was a high, sharp sound. Several guests jumped. Sarah's face was red. Tears filled her eyes. "What is happening?" Sarah's voice was shaking. "Jason, answer me right now!" Jason looked down at the 3 children hugging him. They had curly brown hair. They had light brown skin. They had his eyes. They looked exactly like him. "Oh my God," Jason whispered. Margaret stood completely still. Her face was frozen in shock. She stared at the children. She saw their faces clearly. The oldest boy had her late husband's smile. The little girl had Jason's exact eyes. The other boy had her own face shape. These were Jason's children. These were her grandchildren. Margaret's mind raced. Jason did not have children. He and Sarah could not have children. Sarah had a medical condition. Everyone knew that. Then Margaret saw the woman standing near the elevator. The emerald green gown, the curly black hair, the beautiful brown face. "No," Margaret said out loud. "No, it cannot be." But it was. Abella Williams stood calmly by the elevator doors. She wore the most beautiful gown Margaret had ever seen. Her hair was styled perfectly. She wore diamond earrings and held a small purse. Abella did not smile. She did not move forward. She just watched. Her eyes met Margaret's eyes across the room. Margaret felt something she had not felt in years. Shame. "Jason!" Sarah was shaking his arm. "Who is that woman? Who are these children?" The guests started whispering. Soft voices filled the room. "Are those his kids? I didn't know Jason had children. Who's the mother? Is that woman his mistress? This is incredible." Phones came out. Small lights flashed. People were taking photos. Some were recording videos. Margaret watched her reputation crumble in real time. A business partner named Mr. Tanaka walked up to Margaret. He looked confused. "Mrs. Chen? I did not know you had grandchildren." Margaret could not answer him. The oldest boy looked up at Jason. He had serious eyes. "Daddy, why are you crying?" Jason was crying. Tears ran down his face. He touched the boy's head with a shaking hand. "What's your name?" Jason asked. His voice was barely a whisper. "I'm Marcus. I'm 5 years old. This is my brother Elijah. And that's our sister, Zoe." 5 years old, Jason repeated. Sarah made a choking sound. She pushed Jason away from her. 5 years old? 5 years? Sarah's voice was getting louder. "We've been married for 5 years, Jason." More guests moved closer. They wanted to hear everything. A woman in a red dress was recording on her phone. Zoe looked up at Sarah. The little girl's face was confused. "Why is that lady yelling?" Zoe asked Jason. Jason knelt down. He was at eye level with the children now. He looked at each of their faces. Marcus, Elijah, Zoe. "I'm sorry," Jason said to them. "I'm so sorry." "Sorry for what, Daddy?" Elijah asked. Jason could not answer. Abella finally walked forward. She moved slowly and calmly. Her high heels clicked on the marble floor. Every eye in the room followed her. She reached the children and stood behind them. She put one hand on Marcus's shoulder, one hand on Elijah's shoulder. Zoe moved closer to her mother's leg. Abella looked at Jason, then at Margaret, then at Sarah. "Good evening," Abella said. Her voice was clear and steady. "My name is Abella Williams. These are my children, Marcus, Elijah, and Zoe. They are 5 years old. They were born on August 15th. Jason Chen is their biological father." The room exploded with whispers. Sarah made a horrible crying sound. She collapsed onto a white sofa. Her friends rushed to her side. One friend glared at Jason with pure hatred. Margaret finally found her voice. "This is impossible." "Is it?" Abella asked calmly. She looked directly at Margaret. "You remember me, don't you, Mrs. Chen?" Margaret's face became hard. "I remember you." "Good. Then you remember telling your son to leave me 6 years ago." The guests gasped. Someone said, "Oh my God," very loudly. Margaret's business partner, Mr. Tanaka, stepped back. His wife covered her mouth with her hand. "You have no right to be here," Margaret said. Her voice was cold and angry. "I have every right," Abella replied. "My children wanted to meet their father. They wanted to meet their grandmother. So here we are." Zoe tugged on Abella's dress. "Mommy, I'm hungry. Can I have a cookie?" An older woman standing nearby smiled. She was a friend of Margaret's from the country club. Her name was Mrs. Patterson. "Of course, sweetheart," Mrs. Patterson said. She walked to the catering table and brought back 3 cookies. She gave one to each child. "Thank you," all 3 children said together. They sat on the floor right there in the middle of the party. They ate their cookies happily. They did not understand what was happening around them. Marcus looked up at Margaret while eating his cookie. "Grandma, do you like cookies?" Margaret stared at the little boy. He had Thomas's smile. He had Thomas's kind eyes. Her throat felt tight. She could not speak. Sarah stood up from the sofa. Her face was wet with tears. Her makeup was ruined. "I want everyone to leave," Sarah said. "This party is over." "You cannot dismiss my guests," Margaret said sharply. "Then I'm leaving," Sarah screamed. "I'm leaving right now." Sarah grabbed her purse. She pushed through the crowd toward the elevator. Her friends followed her. "Sarah, wait," Jason said. He started to stand up. "Don't you dare follow me," Sarah screamed at him. "Don't you dare!" The elevator doors closed. Sarah was gone. The guests did not leave. They stood watching. This was better than any television show. Margaret looked at all the faces staring at her. She saw judgment. She saw curiosity. She saw enjoyment of her humiliation. She looked at the children sitting on her floor. She looked at Abella, standing proud and calm. She looked at Jason, kneeling on the ground, crying. Everything she built was falling apart. Her perfect party, her perfect reputation, her perfect control over Jason's life. All of it was destroyed. Elijah finished his cookie. He stood up and walked to Margaret. He looked up at her with innocent eyes. "Are you really our grandma?" he asked. Margaret looked down at him. This small child, this grandchild she never knew existed. Margaret started to say something, but what could she say? Abella watched Margaret struggle. This was what Abella wanted. She wanted Margaret to feel pain. She wanted Margaret to face the consequences of her choices. The large clock in the corner showed midnight. The new year had arrived. Nobody had noticed. There was no countdown, no celebration, no champagne toast, just silence and shame, and 3 small children eating cookies on the floor. Margaret's voice finally came back. It was loud and sharp. It cut through the room like a knife. "Somebody explain to me what is happening right now." Jason stood up slowly. His legs felt weak. He looked at his mother's face. Margaret was staring at him with fury and confusion. "Answer me, Jason," Margaret said. Her voice was shaking. "Who are these children?" Jason opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Abella stepped forward. She kept her hands on Marcus and Elijah's shoulders. Zoe stood close to her mother's leg. "I already told you who they are," Abella said calmly. "These are Jason's children, Marcus, Elijah, and Zoe. They are triplets. They are 5 years old. I gave birth to them alone in Philadelphia." A woman in the crowd gasped loudly. "Triplets?" someone whispered. "He has 3 children? This is unbelievable." Margaret's face turned red. She walked closer to Abella. The 2 women stood face to face. "You are lying," Margaret said. "Am I?" Abella replied. She did not look away. "Look at them, Mrs. Chen. Look at their faces." Margaret did look. She looked at Marcus. He had her late husband Thomas's smile. His eyes were the same shape as Jason's eyes. She looked at Elijah. He had Jason's nose. He had her own face shape. She looked at Zoe. The little girl had Jason's exact eyes, the same dark brown color, the same expression. Margaret felt her chest tighten. "Jason," Margaret said without looking at him, "is this true?" Jason's voice was barely a whisper. "I don't know. I didn't know." "What does that mean?" Margaret demanded. "It means I didn't know she was pregnant." Jason's voice broke. "I didn't know about them." The guests moved closer. Phones were everywhere now, flashing lights, recording videos. This would be all over the internet tomorrow. Margaret saw Mr. Tanaka and his wife whispering to each other. She saw Mrs. Patterson watching with wide eyes. She saw her business partner, Mr. Richardson, recording on his phone. Her reputation was being destroyed. Right here. Right now. "Everyone needs to leave," Margaret said loudly. "This party is over. Leave immediately." Nobody moved. "I said leave!" Margaret shouted. A man in a navy suit shook his head. "We're not going anywhere. This is too interesting." Other guests nodded. They wanted to see what happened next. Margaret felt humiliation burn through her body. These people were enjoying this. They were enjoying watching her perfect life fall apart. Zoe finished her cookie. She walked up to Margaret and tugged on her black dress. "Grandma, are you okay? You look sad." Margaret looked down at the little girl. Zoe had chocolate on her face. She smiled up at Margaret with innocent eyes. "I'm not your grandmother," Margaret said coldly. Zoe's smile disappeared. Her lips started to tremble. "But Mommy said you are. She showed us your picture." Abella walked over and picked up Zoe. She held her daughter on her hip. "It's okay, baby," Abella said softly. "Grandma is just surprised to see us." "I am not surprised," Margaret said. "I am angry. You have no right to come here." "I have every right," Abella said. Her voice was still calm, but stronger now. "You took their father away from them. You forced Jason to leave me. You are the reason they grew up without a daddy." The room went completely silent. Mr. Tanaka turned to his wife. "Did she just say Margaret forced Jason to break up with her?" "That's what I heard," his wife whispered back. Margaret's hands became fists at her sides. "You do not know what you are talking about." "I know exactly what I'm talking about," Abella replied. 6 years ago, Jason loved me. We were happy. Then you gave him an ultimatum. Leave me or lose everything. And he chose money over love. He chose you over me. Jason made a choking sound. He covered his face with his hands. "Is this true, Jason?" Mr. Richardson asked from the crowd. Jason did not answer. Marcus stood up. He walked to Jason and touched his arm. "Daddy, why are you sad?" Jason looked at Marcus. Tears ran down Jason's face. He touched Marcus's cheek gently. "I'm sorry," Jason whispered. "I'm so sorry." "Sorry for what?" Marcus asked. His serious eyes studied Jason's face. Jason could not explain. How could he tell a 5-year-old that he abandoned him before he was born? Abella watched Jason cry. She felt no satisfaction. She thought she would feel victory. She thought she would feel justice. But she just felt tired. "We should talk privately," Jason said. He stood up and wiped his face. "There's nothing to talk about," Abella said. "Please, just 5 minutes." Abella looked at her children. They were confused and starting to get tired. "Fine, 5 minutes." Jason led Abella toward his mother's private study. It was a small room off the main living area. Before they could close the door, someone pushed it open. Sarah stood there. Her face was red and wet with tears. Her makeup was completely ruined. "I'm coming too," Sarah said. Her voice was shaking. "I deserve to hear this." The 3 of them went into the study. Jason closed the door. Through the door, they could hear the guests talking loudly. Sarah stood with her arms crossed. She stared at Jason with pure hatred. "Talk," Sarah demanded. Jason took a deep breath. "Before I met you, I was in a relationship with Abella. We dated for 3 years." "3 years?" Sarah's voice went higher. "Yes, 3 years. I loved her. I wanted to marry her." "Then what happened?" Sarah asked. Jason looked at the floor. "My mother didn't approve. She gave me an ultimatum. Break up with Abella or lose my inheritance." Sarah laughed. It was a bitter, horrible sound. "So you chose money? Of course you did." "I was weak," Jason said quietly. "I was stupid and weak." "And what about them?" Sarah pointed toward the door. "What about those children?" "I didn't know she was pregnant," Jason said. "I swear, I didn't know." Abella spoke for the first time since entering the room. "I found out I was pregnant 2 weeks after you left me. I tried to call you. Your number was disconnected. I went to your apartment. You had moved. You disappeared, Jason." "I changed everything because I couldn't face you," Jason said. "I was ashamed." "You were ashamed?" Abella's voice was hard. "I was pregnant with triplets. I was alone. I lost my job because I was too sick to work. I had to move back to Philadelphia. My mother had to support me. And you were ashamed?" Jason said nothing. Sarah walked up to Jason. She stood very close to him. "Did you ever love me?" Sarah asked. Jason looked at his wife. He opened his mouth to answer. "Tell me the truth," Sarah said. "Did you ever love me even a little bit?" Jason's silence was the answer. Sarah's face crumpled. She started crying again. "Our entire marriage is a lie. Everything. All of it. A lie." "Sarah, I'm sorry." "Stop saying you're sorry," Sarah screamed. She hit Jason's chest with her fists. "Sorry doesn't fix this. Sorry doesn't give me back 5 years." Abella watched Sarah cry. She did not feel sorry for her. Sarah had Jason for 5 years. She had him at her wedding. She had him at holidays and birthdays. Abella's children had nothing. Sarah pulled out her phone. She called someone. The phone rang twice. "Daddy?" Sarah's voice was small and broken. "Daddy, I need you to come get me. I'm at Margaret's penthouse. Please come now, please." She hung up. Sarah walked to Jason. She pulled off her wedding ring. It was a large diamond that cost $30,000. Jason had bought it to impress his mother. Sarah threw the ring at Jason. It hit his chest and fell to the floor. "We're done," Sarah said. "I'm filing for divorce tomorrow. My lawyers will contact you." "Sarah, can we just—" "No, we can't. There's nothing left to talk about." Sarah walked out of the study. She grabbed her coat from the closet. She waited by the elevator. Her friends rushed to her side. "Sarah, are you okay? Should we stay with you? Do you want us to say something to Jason?" Sarah shook her head. She just wanted to leave. The elevator arrived. Sarah and her friends got inside. The doors closed. In the study, Jason picked up the wedding ring from the floor. He held it in his hand. "I destroyed everything," Jason said quietly. "Yes," Abella said. "You did." Jason looked at her. "Can I see them? Can I be part of their lives?" "I don't know," Abella said honestly. "Please, I'm begging you. Let me try. Let me be their father." "You had 5 years to be their father. You weren't there." "Because I didn't know." "You didn't know because you ran away. You changed your number. You moved. You made yourself impossible to find." Jason had no answer for that. In the main room, guests finally started leaving. They whispered and gossiped as they walked to the elevator. They could not wait to tell everyone they knew about it tonight. Margaret stood alone in the center of her penthouse. Staff members cleaned up broken glass. The pianist had left. The caterers were packing up food. Her perfect party was over. Mrs. Patterson walked up to Margaret. "Margaret, dear, are you all right?" "I'm fine," Margaret said automatically. "Those children are beautiful, Mrs." Patterson said gently. Margaret did not respond. Marcus wandered away from Elijah and Zoe. He walked through the penthouse, looking at everything. He saw a large leather chair by the window. It looked comfortable. Marcus climbed onto the chair. It was too big for him. His feet did not touch the floor. He curled up in the chair and yawned. That chair was Thomas Chen's favorite chair. Margaret never let anyone sit in it after he died. Margaret turned and saw Marcus in Thomas's chair. The little boy looked so small. His eyes were closing. He was falling asleep. He looked exactly like Thomas did when he napped in that chair. Margaret felt something break inside her chest. Her eyes filled with tears. She had not cried since Thomas died 10 years ago. But now she could not stop. Mrs. Patterson rushed to Margaret's side. "Margaret, you're crying. Please sit down." Margaret shook her head. She could not stop staring at Marcus. The little boy was asleep now in Thomas's chair. His small body curled up. His chest moved up and down with peaceful breathing. "He looks just like Thomas," Mrs. Patterson whispered. Margaret wiped her eyes quickly. She straightened her back. She tried to compose herself. "I need everyone to leave now," Margaret said. Her voice was shaky. The last guests gathered their coats. They whispered to each other as they left. Margaret heard some of their words. "Did you get video? This is incredible. Wait until I tell Susan about this." Finally, the penthouse was empty. Only staff remained, cleaning up. Margaret told them to leave too. She would deal with the mess tomorrow. Abella came out of the study. Jason followed her. His face was pale and exhausted. Abella walked to the chair where Marcus slept. She gently touched his shoulder. "Marcus, baby, wake up. We need to go home." Marcus opened his eyes slowly. He yawned. "I'm sleepy, Mommy." "I know, sweetheart. You can sleep in the car." Elijah and Zoe were already half asleep on the sofa. Abella picked up Zoe. Jason automatically reached for Elijah. "Don't touch him," Abella said sharply. Jason pulled his hand back. Abella woke Elijah gently. She took Marcus's hand. The three children walked sleepily to the elevator. "Wait," Margaret said. Her voice was quiet but firm. "We need to talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about," Abella said. "Those are my grandchildren." "Now you care?" Abella looked at Margaret with cold eyes. "You didn't care 6 years ago when you destroyed my life." The elevator doors opened. Abella led the children inside. "Bye, Grandma," Zoe said sleepily. The doors closed. Margaret and Jason stood alone in the destroyed party room. Broken glasses, scattered napkins, empty champagne bottles. Margaret turned to Jason. "Go home. Come back tomorrow at noon. We will discuss this properly." Jason nodded. He was too tired to argue. He left through the elevator. Margaret stood alone in her penthouse. She was still wearing her black party dress. Her feet hurt from her high heels. She walked to Thomas's chair. She touched the leather where Marcus had been sleeping. It was still warm. Margaret sat down slowly. She had not sat in this chair since Thomas died. She stayed there all night. She did not sleep. She just sat and thought. The next morning, January 1st, Margaret's phone started ringing at 7 o'clock. She did not answer. It rang again and again. Margaret finally looked at her phone. 53 missed calls. Hundreds of text messages. She opened her email. Messages from business partners, from friends, from people she barely knew. Then she opened the internet. The first article she saw had a headline, "Manhattan Real Estate Queen's Secret Grandchildren." Margaret clicked on it. There were photos from last night. Someone had recorded video. The video showed the children running into the party. It showed them hugging Jason. It showed Margaret dropping her glass. The article had been shared 8,000 times. Margaret clicked on another article. Chen family scandal rocks New Year's Eve party. Another one, billionaire forced son to abandon pregnant girlfriend. Margaret felt sick. She scrolled through social media. The videos were everywhere. People were commenting, "This is terrible." That poor woman raised triplets alone. Margaret Chen is heartless. Those children are beautiful. I feel bad for the wife. Margaret closed her phone. She sat in Thomas's chair and stared at nothing. At noon exactly, Jason arrived. He looked terrible. His eyes were red. He had not shaved. He wore jeans and a sweater instead of his usual expensive suit. "Sit," Margaret said. Jason sat on the sofa across from her. "Tell me everything," Margaret demanded. From the beginning." Jason took a deep breath. "I met Abella 6.5 years ago, at a coffee shop in Brooklyn. I spilled coffee on her scrubs. I apologized and bought her lunch. And then, we started dating. She was different from anyone I ever met. She was kind. She was real. She didn't care about money or status. She just cared about people." Margaret's face was hard. "Continue." "We dated for 3 years. I wanted to marry her. I was going to propose. But you didn't. No, because you called me here. You gave me an ultimatum. Abella or my inheritance." "And you chose your inheritance," Margaret said flatly. "Yes. I was weak. I was afraid. So I broke up with her. I didn't tell her why. I just ended it." "When did you find out about the pregnancy?" "Last night. I didn't know before. I swear I didn't know." Margaret studied her son's face. She believed him. "Why didn't she tell you?" "She tried, but I changed my phone number. I moved apartments. I avoided all the places we used to go. I made myself impossible to find." "Why?" "Because I was ashamed." Jason's voice broke. "I couldn't face her. I couldn't look at what I did. So I ran away." Margaret was quiet for a moment. "Why did she come to the party last night?" Jason looked at his mother. "Revenge. She wanted to humiliate us publicly. She wanted us to feel shame, and it worked." Margaret stood up. She walked to the window. Manhattan spread out below her, the city she conquered, the city where she built everything. "What do you want to do now?" Margaret asked. "I want to be their father. I want to know them. I want to be in their lives." "Does Abella agree?" "I don't know. She said she needs time to think." Margaret pulled out her phone. She showed Jason the articles, the videos, the comments. "Our reputation is destroyed," Margaret said. "I don't care about reputation," Jason said quietly. Margaret looked at her son in surprise. "You should care. Reputation is everything." "No, Mother. Family is everything. And I threw mine away because I listened to you." Margaret's face became red. "Don't blame me for your weakness. I am weak. You're right. But you made me choose. You forced this situation." Jason stood up. "I'm going to Philadelphia. I'm going to see Abella. I'm going to beg her to let me be their father. She'll say no. Maybe, but I have to try." Jason walked to the elevator. Before the doors closed, he looked at his mother. "Those children are your grandchildren. Your only grandchildren. You can either accept them or lose them forever. Choose wisely this time." The elevator doors closed. Margaret stood alone again. She picked up her phone. She looked at the photos people posted online. She zoomed in on the children's faces. Marcus had Thomas's smile. Elijah had her face shape. Zoe had Jason's eyes. They were beautiful. They were hers. In Philadelphia, Abella's car pulled up to a small house on a quiet street. It was 4 o'clock in the morning when they arrived. The children were asleep in the back seat. Abella carried Zoe inside. She came back for Marcus and Elijah. She put them to bed in their shared bedroom. An older woman sat in the living room waiting. She was 60 years old, with gray hair and kind eyes. This was Dorothy Williams, Abella's mother. "That was dangerous," Dorothy said. "I know, Mama. You could have traumatized the children." "They're fine." "Are they?" Dorothy stood up. "Abella, what were you thinking?" "I was thinking they deserve to know their father. I was thinking Jason and his mother deserve to face the truth." "By ambushing them at a party?" Abella sat down on the worn sofa. She was exhausted. "I wanted them to feel what I felt. Shock, humiliation, shame. And did it make you feel better?" Abella thought about that question. "No, it didn't." Dorothy sat next to her daughter. She took Abella's hand. "Baby, I understand your anger. I do. But those children don't understand. They think they just met their daddy and grandma. They think it was a happy moment. It was happy for them. But what happens now? Jason is going to want to see them. Are you ready for that? Abella put her head in her hands. I don't know, Mama. I don't know anything anymore. The next morning, Marcus woke up first. He climbed into Abella's bed. Mommy? Yes, baby? When can we see Daddy again? Abella's heart hurt. I don't know yet. But we just found him. I have so many questions to ask him. I know you do. Does he want to see us? I think so. Then why can't we see him today? How could Abella explain this to a 5-year-old? For 2 weeks, Abella's phone rang constantly. Jason called. He sent text messages. He sent emails. Please let me see them. I'm begging you. I want to be their father. Please, respond. Abella deleted every message without answering. On January 14th, 2 weeks after the party, someone knocked on Abella's door. She opened it. Jason stood on her doorstep. He looked terrible. He had lost weight. His clothes were wrinkled. He had dark circles under his eyes. You need to leave, Abella said immediately. Please, just 5 minutes. No, get off my property. Abella, please, I'm begging you. The neighbors were watching now. Mrs. Rodriguez across the street stood on her porch staring. You're making a scene, Abella said. I don't care. I'll stand here all day if I have to. Abella tried to close the door. Jason put his hand against it. Please, just let me see them. 1 hour. That's all I'm asking. You don't deserve even 1 minute. You're right. I don't. But they deserve a father. They've lived 5 years without one. They're fine. Are they? Marcus asked you when he can see me, didn't he? Abella froze. How did Jason know that? They're children, Jason continued. They don't understand adult problems. They just know they met their daddy. And now their daddy disappeared. Don't do to them what I did to you. Abella stared at Jason. She hated that he was right. 1 hour, she finally said, once a week. Saturday mornings, 10 o'clock. If you're late even once, you never come back. If you disappoint them even once, you never come back. Do you understand? Yes. Yes. Thank you. Don't thank me. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for them. Jason nodded. Tears ran down his face. Can I start this Saturday? Yes. Thank you, Abella. Thank you. Jason walked back to his car. His hands were shaking. He could barely hold his keys. He drove back to New York. It took 2 hours. He felt lighter than he had in weeks. He didn't know that back in Manhattan, his mother had already made a phone call. A private investigator named Robert Miller sat in his office. He just accepted a new case from Margaret Chen. I want to know everything about Abella Williams, where she works, how much money she makes, who helps her with the children. Everything. Yes, Mrs. Chen. I'll have a full report in 1 week. Margaret hung up the phone. She needed to understand her enemy before she could face her. 1 week later, Robert Miller arrived at Margaret's penthouse. He carried a thick folder filled with papers and photographs. Margaret sat at her dining table. She wore a gray suit. Her hair was pulled back tightly. What did you find? Margaret asked. Robert opened the folder. Abella Williams is 33 years old. She works as a registered nurse at Temple University Hospital in Philadelphia. She works the day shift, 7 in the morning until 7 at night, 3 days a week. Only 3 days? Yes, that's all she can manage with the children. Her mother, Dorothy Williams, watches the triplets while Abella works. Robert pulled out financial documents. Abella makes $48,000 per year. After taxes and expenses, she has very little left. She rents a small house on Cherry Street. The house has 2 bedrooms. The children share 1 room. Abella and her mother share the other. Margaret studied the photographs. The house was old, the paint was peeling, the yard was small. She returned all the gifts you sent, Robert continued. The toys, the clothes, the check for $10,000. She sent everything back unopened. Margaret was surprised. Why would she do that? I don't know, Mrs. Chen, but she wants nothing from you. Robert showed more papers. Abella has medical bills from the pregnancy. Triplets require special care. She's still paying off those bills. She also has student loans from nursing school. How much does she owe? Total? About $60,000. Margaret sat back in her chair. $60,000 would destroy Abella financially. But for Margaret, it was nothing. She spent more than that on jewelry. Anything else? Margaret asked. She has no social life. She works, takes care of the children, and sleeps. She doesn't date. She doesn't go out. Her entire life is her children. Robert closed the folder. Mrs. Chen, if I may say something. What? This woman raised 3 children completely alone. She worked double shifts. She never asked your son for money. She never contacted him at all. She's either very proud or very strong. Or very angry, Margaret added. That too. After Robert left, Margaret sat alone with the folder. She looked at pictures of Abella leaving the hospital in her scrubs. Pictures of the children playing in the small yard. Pictures of Dorothy helping the kids into a car. Margaret picked up her phone. She called Jason. Hello? When is your first visit with the children? Margaret had asked. Tomorrow, Saturday morning at 10 o'clock. Call me after. I want to know everything. Margaret hung up before Jason could respond. The next morning, Saturday, Jason drove to Philadelphia. His car was full of wrapped presents. He bought toys and books and games. He wanted the children to like him. Jason arrived at Abella's house at exactly 10 o'clock. He knocked on the door. Abella opened it. She did not smile. You're on time. Yes. 1 hour, not 1 minute more. Jason nodded. Abella stepped aside. Jason entered the small house. The living room was tiny. The furniture was old, but everything was clean. Children's drawings covered the refrigerator. The 3 children sat on the floor watching cartoons. They wore matching pajamas. Kids, your father is here, Abella said. Marcus looked up. He stared at Jason. Then he stood up and walked behind the sofa. He hid there. Elijah waved shyly but stayed on the floor. Zoe jumped up and ran to Jason. She hugged his legs. Daddy, you came back. Jason knelt down. He hugged Zoe carefully. Hi, sweetheart. Did you bring us presents? Zoe asked. Zoe, that's rude, Abella said from the kitchen. It's okay, Jason said. Yes, I brought presents. Jason pulled out the wrapped gifts. Zoe grabbed one immediately. Elijah walked over slowly. He took a gift and said thank you quietly. Marcus stayed behind the sofa. Marcus, come get your present, Abella called. I don't want it, Marcus said. Jason's heart hurt. He set Marcus's present on the coffee table. It'll be here when you're ready, Jason said. The children opened their gifts. Zoe got a set of art supplies. She squealed with happiness. Elijah got a collection of toy trucks. He smiled widely. Marcus peeked over the sofa at his unwrapped gift. Jason sat on the floor. He did not know what to do. Zoe brought him her new crayons. Will you draw with me, Daddy? Sure. They sat on the floor drawing. Zoe drew a house with a family. She pointed at each person. That's Mommy. That's Grandma Dorothy. That's Marcus, Elijah, and me. And that's you, Daddy. Jason's throat felt tight. It's beautiful. Elijah brought his trucks over. He sat next to Jason and made truck sounds. Jason picked up a truck and played along. After 30 minutes, Marcus finally came out from behind the sofa. He walked to the coffee table. He opened his present. It was a book about dinosaurs. Marcus's eyes went wide. "You like dinosaurs?" Jason asked carefully. Marcus nodded. "Which one is your favorite?" "Triceratops," Marcus said quietly. "That's a good one. Can I see the book?" Marcus brought the book over. He sat next to Jason. Not too close, but near. They looked at the pictures together. "Do you know what this one is?" Jason asked, pointing at a picture. "Stegosaurus," Marcus said. "It has plates on its back for protection. You know a lot about dinosaurs." "I read lots of books." Jason smiled. "I liked books when I was your age, too." "What was your favorite book?" Marcus asked. Jason thought. "I liked books about space, about planets and stars." "I like space, too," Marcus said. His voice was less quiet now. "Did you know Jupiter has 67 moons?" "I did not know that." "It's true. I saw it on a show." They talked about space and dinosaurs. Elijah played with his trucks nearby. Zoe drew more pictures. The hour passed quickly. Abella came into the living room. "Time's up." "Already?" Zoe asked. "Yes, baby. Daddy has to go now." "But I want him to stay," Zoe said. "He'll come back next week." "Promise?" Zoe looked at Jason. "I promise," Jason said. "I'll come back next Saturday. Same time." "Will you bring more presents?" Zoe asked. "Zoe," Abella said firmly. "I'll bring dinosaur books for Marcus," Jason said. "And more trucks for Elijah. And more art supplies for you." The children smiled. Jason stood up. He did not want to leave. He wanted to stay longer. He wanted to learn more about them. "Thank you," Jason said to Abella. Abella did not respond. She opened the front door. Jason walked to his car. Before he got in, he looked back at the house. The children stood in the window waving. He waved back. Jason drove back to New York. The drive took 2 hours but felt like 10 minutes. His mind was full of thoughts. Marcus liked dinosaurs. Elijah liked trucks. Zoe liked art. Marcus was serious and smart. Elijah was sweet and shy. Zoe was bold and friendly. They were amazing. They were his children. And he missed 5 years of their lives. Jason called his mother from the car. "How did it go?" Margaret asked immediately. "It was awkward at first. Marcus hid from me, but by the end he was talking to me about dinosaurs." "Dinosaurs? He's really smart, Mom. He knows so much. And Elijah is gentle and kind. And Zoe is full of energy. They're perfect." Margaret was quiet. "I want to meet them," Margaret said. "Abella will never allow that." "Let me worry about Abella." "Mom, don't do anything." Margaret hung up. 2 days later, Monday morning, Margaret drove to Philadelphia. She did not tell Jason. She did not tell anyone. She found Abella's house easily. The small house with peeling paint. Margaret parked her expensive car on the street. Her car looked wrong in this neighborhood. Margaret walked to the door. She wore high heels and an expensive coat. She knocked. Abella opened the door. She was wearing scrubs. She was about to leave for work. When Abella saw Margaret, her face became hard. She tried to close the door immediately. Margaret put her hand on the door. "Wait, please." Abella pushed against the door. "Get off my property. I just want 5 minutes." "No." "Please, I'm asking nicely." Abella stopped pushing. She stared at Margaret. She had never heard Margaret say "please" before. "5 minutes," Abella said. "Then you leave and never come back." Margaret stepped inside. The house was even smaller than the photographs showed. The furniture was worn, the carpet was old, but children's toys were everywhere. Drawings covered the walls, photos of the triplets filled every surface. "Where are the children?" Margaret asked. "School." "At this hour? It's 8 o'clock in the morning." "They go to early care before school starts. I have to work." Margaret looked around. This was where her grandchildren lived. This tiny house with old furniture and a cramped kitchen. "Sit," Abella said. She pointed to the sofa. Margaret sat carefully. Abella remained standing, arms crossed. "Why did you come to the party?" Margaret asked. "I already told you. The children deserved to meet their father." "You could have called Jason. You could have sent a letter. Why publicly humiliate us?" Abella's eyes were cold. "You humiliated me 6 years ago. You told Jason I wasn't good enough for your family. You forced him to leave me. You destroyed my life. I wanted you to feel what I felt. And now, do you feel better?" "No," Abella admitted. "I don't." Margaret looked at a photo on the wall. The triplets were babies. Abella held all 3 of them. She looked exhausted, but happy. "Why didn't you contact Jason about the pregnancy?" "I tried. He disappeared. He changed everything so I couldn't find him." "You could have tried harder." Abella laughed bitterly. "Why would I? He made his choice. He chose you over me. I wasn't going to beg him to be a father." Margaret stood up. "Those children are my grandchildren, my only grandchildren. I want to be part of their lives." "No, you can't keep them from me forever. Watch me." Abella walked to the door and opened it. "Your 5 minutes are up. Leave." Margaret walked to the door. She stopped and looked at Abella. "I was wrong to force Jason to leave you. I know that now. You're 6 years too late." Margaret left. She walked to her car. She sat inside but did not start the engine. She looked at the small house. She saw Abella leave for work. She saw Dorothy arrive to watch the house until the children came home from school. Margaret sat there for another hour, just watching, just thinking. Finally, she started the car and drove back to Manhattan. She did not get what she wanted today, but she would not give up. Those were her grandchildren, and somehow she would find a way to know them. Margaret returned to Manhattan that evening. Traffic was heavy. She had time to think. She kept seeing the small house, the worn furniture, the cramped rooms. Her grandchildren lived there. When Margaret arrived at her penthouse, she felt strange. The space was enormous. The furniture was expensive. Everything was perfect. But it was empty. The next Saturday, Jason visited the children again. This was his second visit. He arrived at exactly 10 o'clock with more gifts. Marcus opened the door this time. "Hi, Dad?" Jason's heart jumped. Marcus called him Dad instead of Daddy. "Hi, Marcus. Can I come in?" Marcus nodded and stepped aside. The children were already waiting in the living room. They were excited. Zoe ran to Jason and hugged him. "Did you bring the art supplies?" "I did." Jason handed out the gifts. Dinosaur books for Marcus. More toy trucks for Elijah. Paints and brushes for Zoe. This visit was easier than the first. Marcus sat next to Jason right away. They looked at dinosaur books together. "Did you know the T-Rex couldn't actually roar?" Marcus said. "Really?" "Yes. Scientists think it made a different sound. More like a rumble." Jason listened carefully to everything Marcus said. He asked questions. He learned about Marcus's favorite subjects at school. Elijah showed Jason how to make the trucks crash into each other. They built a ramp with books. They laughed when the trucks flew off the ramp. Zoe painted a picture of flowers. She used every color Jason brought. She got paint on her hands and face. She smiled the entire time. The hour passed too quickly again. "Time to go," Abella said from the kitchen. "Already?" Elijah asked sadly. "Yes. Say goodbye to your father." All 3 children hugged Jason. Even Marcus hugged him this time. "See you next week, Dad," Marcus said. Jason drove home feeling lighter. He called his mother. "They're warming up to me. Marcus called me Dad." "That's good," Margaret said. but her voice sounded strange. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. I'm fine." But Margaret was not fine. That week, Margaret attended a business meeting. 5 real estate investors sat around the conference table. They all knew about the New Year's Eve party. Everyone knew. "Margaret, we need to discuss the Boston property," Mr. Richardson said. They talked about business for 30 minutes. Everything seemed normal. But Margaret felt the change. The men were distant. They were polite, but cold. After the meeting, Margaret invited them for lunch. This was normal after their meetings. "I'm sorry, I have another appointment," Mr. Richardson said. "I also have plans," said Mr. Tanaka. All 5 men made excuses. They left quickly. Margaret sat alone at the conference table. They were avoiding her. Her reputation was damaged. Her scandal made them uncomfortable. On Thursday, Margaret attended a charity event. It was a fundraiser at the Plaza Hotel. Margaret donated $50,000 every year. When Margaret arrived, women she knew for 20 years turned away. They pretended not to see her. Mrs. Patterson was the only one who said hello. "How are you, Margaret?" "I'm well, thank you." "And the grandchildren?" "I haven't seen them yet." Mrs. Patterson looked sad. "That must be difficult." "It is." Margaret left the event early. She went home to her empty penthouse. She poured a glass of wine. She sat in Thomas's chair. For the first time in her life, Margaret felt truly alone. The next Saturday was Jason's 3rd visit. He brought a photo album this time instead of toys. "What's that?" Marcus asked. "Pictures of my family, your family." The children gathered around Jason on the floor. He opened the album. "This is me when I was your age." "You were small," Zoe said. "Everyone is small when they're 5. Jason turned the page. "This is my father, your grandfather. His name was Thomas." Marcus leaned closer. He stared at the photo. "He looks like me." "Yes, he does. You have his smile." "Where is he now?" Elijah asked. "He died 10 years ago, before you were born." "That's sad," Zoe said. "Yes, but I have these pictures, so I can remember him." Jason showed more photos. Pictures of Thomas and Margaret when they were young. Pictures of Jason as a baby. Pictures of family vacations and holidays. Marcus studied every photo carefully. "Who's that?" Marcus pointed at Margaret in a photo. "That's your grandmother, my mother." "Grandma Margaret," Zoe said, "from the party." "Yes." "Why doesn't she visit us?" Elijah asked. Jason did not know how to answer. "She's very busy with work." "Too busy for us?" Marcus asked. His voice was serious. "I don't know, Marcus." "Does she not like us?" Zoe asked quietly. No, it's not that." "Then why doesn't she come?" Marcus asked again. Jason looked at Abella. She was in the kitchen listening to everything. She did not help him answer. "It's complicated," Jason finally said. "What does complicated mean?" Elijah asked. "It means grown-ups make mistakes sometimes, and fixing those mistakes takes time." Marcus closed the photo album. "I want to meet her," Marcus said. "I want to meet Grandma Margaret." That night, after the children went to bed, Abella sat with Dorothy in the living room. "Marcus asked about Margaret again," Abella said. "What did you tell him?" "Nothing. I didn't know what to say." Dorothy looked at her daughter. "They're curious about her. That's natural." "I know." "Are you going to let her meet them?" "No, never." "Never is a long time, Abella. She doesn't deserve to know them." Dorothy was quiet for a moment. "Maybe not, but they deserve to know their grandmother." Abella shook her head. "You didn't see what she did to me, Mama. How she treated me. How she looked at me." "I know, baby. I know." In Manhattan, Margaret sat in a therapist's office for the second time. The therapist's name was Dr. Sarah Klein. She was 50 years old, with gray hair and kind eyes. "Tell me why you're here, Margaret," Dr. Klein said. "I already told you last week." "Tell me again." Margaret sighed. "I have 3 grandchildren. I didn't know they existed until 3 weeks ago. Their mother hates me. She won't let me see them." "Why does she hate you?" "Because I forced my son to break up with her 6 years ago." "Why did you do that?" Margaret looked at the floor. "Because she's black, and I'm prejudiced." Saying it out loud was painful. "Do you still feel prejudiced?" Dr. Klein asked. "I don't know. I thought my prejudice was about protecting my family, about keeping our culture. But now I see I was just afraid." "Afraid of what?" "Afraid of losing control. Afraid of what people would think. Afraid of change." Dr. Klein wrote something in her notebook. "What do you want, Margaret?" "I want to know my grandchildren. I want to be their grandmother." "Then you need to change, really change. Not just say you changed, actually become different." "I don't know how." "Yes, you do. You're here, aren't you? That's the first step." After the session, Margaret went home. She sat at her desk. She pulled out paper and a pen. She started writing a letter to Abella. She wrote 10 different versions. She threw away 9 of them. The final letter said, "Dear Abella, I was wrong. I hurt you. I hurt my son. I hurt my grandchildren. I let my pride and my prejudice destroy my family. I cannot change the past, but I want to be better. I want to be in their lives. I want to be a real grandmother. Please, give me one chance. Margaret Chen." Margaret put the letter in an envelope. She wrote Abella's address. She mailed it the next morning. 3 days later, Abella received the letter. She opened it. She read it. Then she tore it into small pieces. She threw the pieces in the trash. Dorothy watched from the kitchen. What was that? A letter from Margaret. What did it say? I don't care what it said. Abella. No, Mama, I'm done talking about this. 2 more weeks passed. Jason visited every Saturday. The children loved him more each week. Marcus told Jason about school. Elijah shared his favorite snacks. Zoe showed Jason every picture she drew. Jason felt happy for the first time in 6 years. But he also felt crushing guilt. He missed so much. Their first words, their first steps, their first days of school. He could never get those years back. On the 4th Saturday, Jason asked Abella a question. Can I take them to the park? No, just for an hour. I'll stay with them the whole time. I said no, Jason. Can I at least stay for 2 hours instead of 1? No, 1 hour. That's the rule. Jason did not argue. He accepted her decision. On Tuesday, March 14th, Jason was at his apartment in Brooklyn. He was sleeping. His phone rang at 2 o'clock in the morning. Jason grabbed the phone. He saw Abella's name. His heart stopped. Abella never called him, especially not at night. Hello? Abella's voice was shaking. It's Marcus. He's very sick. We're at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. His fever is 105 degrees. The doctors are worried. Jason was already getting out of bed. I'm coming right now. Jason, he keeps asking for you. He wants his dad. I'm leaving now. I'll be there in 2 hours. Jason threw on clothes. He grabbed his car keys. He ran to his car. He called his mother while driving. Margaret answered on the first ring. Jason, what's wrong? Jason was crying. Mom, it's Marcus. He's in the hospital. He's really sick. I can't lose my son. I just found him. I can't lose him. Margaret sat up in bed. Which hospital? Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. I'm coming too. Mom, Abella won't want you there. I don't care. That's my grandson. I'm coming. Margaret hung up. She got dressed quickly. She got in her car. She drove to Philadelphia in the middle of the night. She broke every speed limit. She arrived at the hospital at 3 o'clock in the morning. Margaret walked through the hospital doors. The building was quiet at night. Only a few nurses worked at the front desk. "I'm looking for Marcus Chen," Margaret said. "Or Marcus Williams. He's 5 years old. He was admitted tonight." The nurse checked her computer. "Third floor, pediatric wing, room 312. Margaret took the elevator. Her hands were shaking. She had not felt this afraid since Thomas died. The elevator doors opened. Margaret walked down the hallway. She passed other rooms with sick children. She heard crying. She heard machines beeping. She found room 312. Through the window, Margaret saw Jason sitting next to a hospital bed. A small boy lay in the bed. He had tubes and wires attached to him. He looked so small. Abella was asleep in a chair on the other side of the bed. Her head leaned back. Her mouth was open slightly. She looked exhausted. Margaret stood in the hallway. She did not go inside. She did not want to upset Abella. She just watched. Marcus's chest moved up and down slowly. He was breathing. That was good. Margaret noticed papers on the table next to Abella. Medical bills. She could see numbers. Thousands of dollars. Jason saw his mother through the window. He came out into the hallway. "Mom, what are you doing out here?" "I didn't want to disturb Abella. How long have you been standing here?" "A few minutes." Jason looked terrible. His eyes were red. His face was pale. "What did the doctors say?" Margaret asked. "Pneumonia. His fever is very high. They're giving him medicine, but it's not working yet." "Will he be okay?" "They don't know." Jason's voice broke. "Mom, what if he doesn't make it? What if I lose him?" Margaret put her hand on Jason's arm. "He'll make it. He's strong. You don't know that." "Yes, I do. He's our family. We're strong." Jason started crying. Margaret pulled him into a hug. They stood in the hospital hallway holding each other. Inside the room, Abella woke up. She saw Jason and Margaret through the window. She saw them hugging. Abella stood up slowly. Her back hurt from sleeping in the chair. She walked to the door and opened it. "What are you doing here?" Abella asked Margaret. "Jason called me. I came immediately." "You need to leave. Please, let me stay. I won't bother you. I'll just sit in the hallway." Abella looked at Margaret's face. She looked different. Less cold. Less hard. She looked scared. "The waiting room is down the hall," Abella said. "You can wait there." She closed the door. Margaret walked to the waiting room. It was empty. She sat in an uncomfortable plastic chair. She stayed there all night. She did not sleep. She just sat and prayed. She had not prayed in years. But she prayed now. At 7 o'clock in the morning, nurses changed shifts. New doctors made their rounds. Margaret heard footsteps and voices. At 8 o'clock, Jason came to the waiting room. His fever went up. "It's 106 now. The doctors are very worried." Margaret stood up. "Can I see him? Just for a minute?" "I don't think Abella will allow it." "Please, ask her." Jason went back to the room. He talked to Abella quietly. She shook her head. He asked again. She shook her head harder. Jason came back to the waiting room. "I'm sorry, Mom." Margaret sat down again. She felt helpless. This was not something money could fix. This was not something power could control. All day Margaret sat in the waiting room. Jason brought her coffee. He brought her a sandwich. She did not eat it. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Margaret walked to Marcus's room again. She looked through the window. Abella was next to the bed. She held Marcus's small hand. She was crying. Margaret felt her own tears start. She went back to the waiting room. At 6 o'clock, Abella came to the waiting room. She looked shocked to see Margaret still there. You're still here? Yes. Why? Because he's my grandson. Abella stared at Margaret. You can go to the cafeteria and bring back food. For both of us. It was not an invitation. It was an order. But Margaret took it. Margaret went to the cafeteria. She bought 2 sandwiches, 2 bottles of water, and 2 apples. She brought everything back. Abella ate her sandwich quickly. She was starving. Thank you, Abella said quietly. You're welcome. Abella went back to Marcus's room. Margaret returned to the waiting room. That night, Jason went to a hotel to shower and sleep for a few hours. Margaret stayed at the hospital. At midnight, Margaret walked to Marcus's room again. Abella was asleep in the chair. She looked uncomfortable. Her neck was bent at a bad angle. Margaret stood in the hallway and watched her grandson sleep. The next morning, Abella woke up and saw Margaret through the window again. Margaret was sitting in a chair in the hallway. She had been there all night. Abella came out. Did you sleep? No. You should go home. I don't want to. Abella studied Margaret's face. Why do you care so much? You didn't care before. I was wrong before. That doesn't answer my question. Margaret looked at Marcus through the window. He has my husband's smile. When I saw him at the party, I saw Thomas, and I realized what I lost, what I threw away because of my pride. Abella did not respond. I know you hate me, Margaret continued. You have every right to. But please let me stay. I won't bother you. I just want to be near him. Abella was quiet for a long time. You can sit inside the room, but in the corner. Don't talk to me. Don't talk to him. Just sit. Thank you. Margaret followed Abella into the room. She sat in a chair in the corner. She stayed very quiet. For 3 days, Margaret sat in that corner. She watched Marcus sleep. She watched the doctors and nurses come and go. She watched Abella take care of her son. On the 2nd day, Margaret went to the cafeteria and brought back food without being asked. Abella accepted it. On the 3rd day, Abella left to shower at home. Margaret stayed with Marcus. She did not touch him. She did not speak to him. She just sat there. When Abella came back, Marcus was still sleeping peacefully. On the 4th day, Marcus's fever finally started to go down. The doctors said he was getting better. Abella cried with relief. She held Marcus's hand and sobbed. Margaret cried too, quietly, in her corner. On the 5th day, Dorothy brought Elijah and Zoe to visit. They were scared. They had never seen Marcus sick before. The 2 children entered the room slowly. They saw Marcus in the hospital bed with tubes and wires. Zoe started crying. Is Marcus going to die? Zoe asked. No, baby, Abella said. He's getting better. Elijah stood frozen near the door. He looked terrified. Margaret stood up from her corner chair. She walked to Elijah slowly. She knelt down to his level. Hi, Elijah. Do you remember me? Elijah nodded. Your brother is going to be okay, I promise. How do you know? Elijah asked. Because I've been here watching him, and I can see he's getting stronger every day. Zoe walked over to Margaret. She was still crying. I'm scared, Grandma. Margaret's heart stopped. Zoe called her grandma. Margaret opened her arms. Zoe walked into them. Margaret hugged her granddaughter for the first time. It's okay to be scared, Margaret said softly. But Marcus is very strong. He's going to be fine. Elijah moved closer. He put his small hand in Margaret's hand. Abella watched this happen. She saw her children seeking comfort from Margaret. She saw Margaret being gentle with them. Dorothy stood next to Abella. She's been here the whole time? Dorothy whispered. 5 days, Abella whispered back. That means something. After an hour, Dorothy took Elijah and Zoe home. They needed to rest. Before they left, Elijah hugged Margaret. "Will you be here tomorrow, Grandma?" he asked. "Yes, I'll be here." That evening, Marcus woke up fully for the first time in 5 days. His eyes opened. He looked around the room. He saw his mother. He saw his father. He saw Margaret in the corner. "Hi, Grandma," Marcus said. His voice was weak but clear. Margaret could not speak. Tears ran down her face. She walked to the bed. She held Marcus's small hand very gently. "Hi, sweetheart. Grandma is here." Marcus smiled and closed his eyes. He fell back asleep. That night, Abella and Margaret sat together in the hospital cafeteria. It was late. They were alone. "You've been here for 5 days," Abella said. "Yes." "Why?" "Because he's my grandson. Because I already missed 5 years. I won't miss another moment if I can help it." Abella drank her coffee. She was exhausted. She had not slept properly in days. "I was wrong," Margaret said. "I hurt you. I hurt my son. I hurt my grandchildren. I let my pride and my prejudice destroy my family. I cannot change the past. But I want to be better. I want to be in their lives. I want to be a real grandmother." Abella looked at Margaret for a long time. "You broke Jason's heart 6 years ago. He broke mine. Your grandchildren grew up without a father because of you. I don't forgive you yet. Maybe I never will." Margaret nodded. She understood. "But," Abella continued, "they deserve to know you, so you can visit once a week. Saturdays, same time as Jason. If you ever hurt them, if you ever show prejudice again, you will never see them again. Do you understand?" "Yes, I understand. Thank you." "Don't thank me. I'm not doing this for you. I know." They sat in silence for a while. "Can I start this Saturday?" Margaret asked. "Yes." Margaret felt something she had not felt in years. Hope. Marcus came home from the hospital 3 days later. He was weak, but recovering. Abella set up a bed for him in the living room so she could watch him constantly. On Saturday morning, Jason arrived for his visit. But this time, Margaret came with him. The children were in the living room. Marcus was resting on the sofa. Elijah and Zoe were playing quietly nearby. When the door opened and they saw Margaret, Zoe screamed with happiness. "Grandma Maggie!" Zoe ran to Margaret and hugged her legs. Elijah followed and hugged her too. "You came! You said you would come!" Margaret knelt down and hugged both children. "I always keep my promises." Marcus smiled from the sofa. He was too tired to get up, but he waved. "Hi, Grandma." Margaret walked over and sat next to him carefully. "How are you feeling, sweetheart?" "Better, but Mommy says I have to rest." "Your mommy is very smart. You should listen to her." For the next hour, Margaret sat on the floor with the children. Jason sat nearby. They played simple games. They read books. They talked. It was awkward at first. Margaret did not know how to play. She was stiff and formal. "Grandma, you have to sit on the floor," Zoe said. "I am sitting on the floor." "No, sit like this." Zoe showed her how to sit cross-legged. Margaret tried. Her back hurt. Her legs hurt. But she did it. Elijah brought his toy cars. He showed Margaret how to make them race. "You have to make the sound, Grandma, like this. Vroom." Margaret felt silly, but she made the sound. Vroom. The children laughed. Margaret found herself smiling, really smiling. When the hour ended, Margaret did not want to leave. "Can we come back next week?" Margaret asked Abella. "Yes, same time." In the car on the way back to New York, Margaret was quiet. Jason drove. "That was nice," Jason said. "It was." "You're smiling, Mom." "Am I?" Margaret touched her face. She was smiling. She could not remember the last time she smiled like this. Over the next month, Margaret's life changed completely. She met with her real estate assistant at her penthouse. "I want to sell this apartment," Margaret said. The assistant's eyes went wide. "Mrs. Chen, are you serious?" "Yes, put it on the market immediately." "But this penthouse is—" "I don't want it anymore. Sell it." Margaret's business partners called her constantly. They were concerned. "Margaret, are you having some kind of breakdown?" Mr. Richardson asked. "No, I'm making changes." "But selling your home? That seems extreme." "It's not my home. It's just a building." Margaret also started looking at houses in New Jersey. She wanted to live closer to Philadelphia. She found a house in Cherry Hill. It was 20 minutes from Abella's house. The house had 4 bedrooms. It had a big backyard. Margaret bought a swing set for the yard. She bought it before she even closed on the house. Meanwhile, Jason was also making changes. Sarah's divorce lawyers were brutal. They wanted half of everything. They wanted the apartment. They wanted money. They wanted Jason to pay for Sarah's lifestyle. Jason gave them everything they asked for. He did not fight. "You should negotiate," his lawyer said. "No, give her what she wants. I just want this over." Sarah's family was spreading stories about Jason. They told everyone that Jason was a cheater, that he lied to Sarah, that he abandoned his wife for his mistress. Jason's business clients heard the stories. Some of them left. They did not want to work with someone who had a scandal. Margaret's business partners called a meeting. All 5 of them sat around the conference table. Margaret and Jason sat together. "Jason needs to step down from his position," Mr. Richardson said. "What?" Margaret's voice was sharp. "The scandal is bad for business. Clients are leaving. We're losing money. Jason is vice president. You can't just remove him." "We can, and we are. It's in the company bylaws. Any partner who damages the company's reputation can be removed." Margaret looked at the other 4 men. They all nodded. They agreed with Mr. Richardson. "This is ridiculous," Margaret said. "I'm sorry, Margaret, but it's necessary." Jason stood up. "It's fine. I'll resign." "Jason," Margaret started. "It's okay, Mom. I understand." Jason walked out of the conference room. Margaret followed him. "You don't have to resign. I can fight this." "No, they're right. I damaged the reputation. I take responsibility." "What will you do?" "I'll find another job. I'll start over." Trinid moved out of his expensive apartment in Midtown. He found a small 2-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn. It was not fancy, but it was affordable. He started applying for jobs at smaller real estate companies that did not care about scandals. Every Saturday, Jason and Margaret drove to Philadelphia together. They spent time with the children. They learned about Marcus's love of science, about Elijah's sweetness, about Zoe's creativity. Slowly, the children grew comfortable with them. One Saturday, Zoe brought her hairbrush to Margaret. "Can you braid my hair, Grandma?" Margaret had never braided hair in her life. "I don't know how." "I'll teach you," Abella said from the kitchen. Abella showed Margaret how to braid. Margaret's first attempt was terrible. The braid fell apart immediately. Zoe giggled. "That's okay, Grandma. Try again." Margaret tried again, and again. By the 4th try, she made a decent braid. "You did it," Zoe said happily. Margaret felt proud. It was a small thing, but it mattered. On a Saturday in May, Margaret told Abella about the house in Cherry Hill. "I bought a house in New Jersey, close to here." Abella looked surprised. "Why would you do that?" "So I can be near my grandchildren." "You're moving from Manhattan to New Jersey? For them?" "Yes." Abella did not know what to say. That evening, Abella invited Margaret and Jason to stay for dinner. This was the first time she invited them to eat with the family. They sat around the small kitchen table. Dorothy was there too. The children talked excitedly about their day. Food was passed around. It was simple food: spaghetti and salad. but it was warm and filling. Dorothy studied Margaret across the table. "So you're selling your fancy penthouse?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because it's too big. Too empty. I don't need it." "And you're moving to Jersey?" "Yes." Dorothy put down her fork. "Let me ask you something, Margaret, and I want an honest answer." "Okay. Why did you treat Abella so badly 6 years ago?" The table went quiet. The children stopped talking. Jason stopped eating. Margaret looked at Dorothy, then at Abella, then at the children. "Because I was prejudiced. I grew up with old beliefs. Wrong beliefs. I thought Jason should only marry someone from our community. Someone who looked like us." "You mean someone who wasn't black?" Dorothy said bluntly. "Yes, that's what I mean." The children looked confused. Marcus asked, "What does prejudiced mean?" Abella answered carefully, "It means judging someone by how they look instead of who they are." Marcus looked at Margaret. "Did you judge Mommy by how she looks?" Margaret's throat felt tight. "Yes, Marcus, I did. And I was very wrong." "Do you still do that?" Marcus asked seriously. "I'm trying not to. I'm trying to be better." Marcus thought about this. "Okay, people can change. My teacher says that." After dinner, the children went to play. Jason helped clean dishes. Dorothy went outside to sit on the porch. Margaret and Abella were alone in the kitchen. "Thank you for letting me come here," Margaret said, "for giving me this chance. I'm not doing it for you. I know. But I see you trying. That matters." Margaret dried the dishes Abella washed. They worked in silence. It was not comfortable, but it was peaceful. Later, Jason drove Margaret back to New York. It was a long, quiet drive. "Mom, I'm sorry," Jason said. "For what?" "For everything. For being weak. For listening to you 6 years ago. For ruining everything." Margaret looked at her son. "I'm the one who should apologize. I forced you to choose. I threatened you. This is my fault, not yours. We both made mistakes. Yes, but I'm the mother. I should have known better." They drove in silence for a while. "I'm proud of you," Margaret said quietly. Jason looked at her in surprise. "Why?" "Because you're trying. You show up every week. You're learning to be a father. That takes courage." Jason's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, Mom." 2 weeks later, Abella called Margaret. It was a Tuesday afternoon. "Hello?" Margaret answered. "It's Abella." "Is everything okay? Are the children okay?" "Yes, everyone's fine. I'm calling because next week is the triplets' 6th birthday. We're having a party. Nothing big, just family. Dorothy will be here. Jason will be here." Margaret held her breath. "You should come too," Abella said. Margaret felt tears in her eyes. "Are you sure?" "Yes. The party is Saturday at 2 o'clock. At my house. I'll be there. Thank you, Abella." "Don't thank me yet. Just don't bring expensive gifts. Simple presents only." "I understand." After Abella hung up, Margaret sat in her penthouse. She looked around at the expensive furniture, the marble floors, the crystal chandelier. She was leaving all of this behind, and she did not feel sad about it at all. The week before the birthday party, Margaret went shopping. She wanted to buy presents for the children, but remembered Abella's words. Simple presents only. Margaret walked through toy stores. Everything looked cheap to her. She was used to buying expensive things. She picked up a toy and looked at the price tag. $15. That was nothing, but she put it in her basket anyway. For Marcus, she bought 3 books about space. For Elijah, she bought a set of toy fire trucks. For Zoe, she bought a sketchbook and colored pencils. At the checkout, the total was $62. Margaret usually spent more than that on coffee in 1 week. On Saturday, Margaret drove to Philadelphia. She arrived at Abella's house at exactly 2 o'clock. The small house was decorated with balloons. A banner hung on the front porch that said, "Happy birthday, Marcus, Elijah, and Zoe." Margaret knocked on the door. Dorothy answered. "Hello, Margaret." "Hello, Dorothy." It was the first time they spoke directly to each other. Dorothy looked at Margaret with careful eyes. "Come in." The living room was full of children. Not just Marcus, Elijah, and Zoe. There were other kids too, friends from school. They ran around playing and laughing. Margaret felt out of place. She wore a simple dress, but it still looked expensive. Everyone else wore jeans and casual clothes. "Grandma Maggie!" Zoe saw her and ran over. "You came!" "Of course I came. Happy birthday, sweetheart." All three children gathered around Margaret. They were excited and hyper from cake and games. "Did you bring presents?" Elijah asked. "Elijah, that's rude," Abella said from the kitchen. "It's okay," Margaret said. "Yes, I brought presents." She gave each child their gift. They opened them right away. Marcus's eyes went wide when he saw the space books. "These are perfect. Thank you, Grandma." Elijah made siren sounds with his new fire trucks. Zoe hugged the sketchbook to her chest. "I'm going to draw you a picture, Grandma." Jason arrived a few minutes later. He brought presents too, simple ones. Margaret and Jason stood together near the wall. They watched the children play. "This is nice," Jason said. "Yes. I never had parties like this when I was a kid." Margaret knew what he meant. Jason's childhood parties were formal events, expensive venues, catered food. Everything was perfect, but nothing was fun. "Neither did I," Margaret admitted. One of the mothers at the party walked up to Margaret. "Hi, I'm Sarah. My daughter Emma is in Marcus's class." "Hello, I'm Margaret." "You're the grandmother, right?" "Yes." Sarah looked uncomfortable. "I saw the videos from New Year's Eve. Everyone did." Margaret felt her face get hot with shame. "I'm sorry about that," Sarah continued. "It must have been difficult." "It was my fault. I made terrible choices." Sarah looked surprised by Margaret's honesty. "Well, those kids are lucky to have you now. Marcus talks about you at school. He says his Grandma Maggie is teaching him about his heritage." "Is he?" "Yes. He told the class about Chinese New Year last week. He was very proud." After Sarah walked away, Margaret felt strange. Marcus talked about her at school. He was proud of her. The party continued. The children played musical chairs. They played pin the tail on the donkey. They ate cake and ice cream. Margaret sat on the old sofa and watched. Dorothy sat next to her. "The kids are happy," Dorothy said. "Yes, they are." "You look different than I expected." Margaret looked at Dorothy. "What did you expect? Someone cold, someone mean, but you're sitting here watching kids play party games, and you're smiling." "I'm trying to change." "I can see that." They sat in silence for a moment. "I need to tell you something," Dorothy said. "I don't forgive you for what you did to my daughter. Not yet. I understand. But I see you showing up. I see you trying. That counts for something." "Thank you." After the party ended, most people left. Only family remained. Margaret, Jason, Abella, Dorothy, and the three children. They cleaned up together. Margaret picked up paper plates and cups. She had never cleaned up after a party before. She always had staff to do it. "Grandma, will you play a game with us?" Marcus asked. "What kind of game?" "A board game. We got one for our birthday." The family sat around the small kitchen table. They played the board game. It was simple and silly. The children laughed. Even Abella smiled. Margaret found herself laughing too. At 7 o'clock, the children were tired. They had been excited all day. Now they were crashing. "Time for bed," Abella said. "But it's our birthday," Zoe protested. "Birthday or not, you need sleep." Margaret and Jason prepared to leave. "Wait," Zoe said. She ran to her room. She came back with a piece of paper. "I drew this for you, Grandma." It was a crayon drawing of their family: Abella, Dorothy, Marcus, Elijah, Zoe, Jason, and Margaret. They were all holding hands. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "This is beautiful. Thank you." She hugged Zoe tightly. On the drive back to New York, Margaret looked at the drawing. She put it on the passenger seat so she could see it. "Mom, are you crying?" Jason asked. "No." "You are. I can see tears." Margaret wiped her eyes. "I'm just happy." 3 months passed. It was now August. Margaret's life was completely different. She sold her penthouse. She moved into the house in Cherry Hill. The house was smaller than the penthouse, but it felt warmer. Margaret filled one bedroom with toys and books for the children. She set up the swing set in the backyard. Every Saturday, the children came to visit. Sometimes, they slept over. Margaret learned to make simple meals: pancakes for breakfast, grilled cheese for lunch. She was not a good cook, but she tried. Jason found a new job at a small real estate company in Philadelphia. The pay was much less than before, but he was closer to his children. Jason's divorce from Sarah was finalized. Sarah remarried quickly to a man from her social circle. Jason felt relieved. That part of his life was over. Now, Jason saw his children 4 times a week. He picked them up from school on Wednesdays. He took them to the park on Thursdays. He had them for the weekend twice a month. He learned their favorite foods. Marcus liked macaroni and cheese. Elijah liked chicken nuggets. Zoe liked pizza. He learned their fears. Marcus was afraid of thunderstorms. Elijah was afraid of the dark. Zoe was afraid of dogs. He learned their dreams. Marcus wanted to be a scientist. Elijah wanted to be a firefighter. Zoe wanted to be an artist. Jason was becoming a real father. Abella watched all of this carefully. She saw Jason had changed. He was not the weak man who left her 6 years ago. He was responsible now. He showed up. He kept his promises. She started to trust him more. One evening in August, Abella called Jason. "The kids want to spend the weekend at your apartment. Is that okay?" Jason's heart jumped. Yes, of course." "When?" "Next weekend, Friday evening to Sunday afternoon. I'll pick them up Friday after school." "Jason, if anything happens—" "Nothing will happen, and I promise I'll take care of them." That Friday, Jason picked up all 3 children from school. They were excited. They had never stayed at his apartment before. Jason's apartment was small, 2 bedrooms. One for him, one for the children. He set up 3 small beds in the kids' room. He bought new sheets with dinosaurs, fire trucks, and flowers. The children loved it. That weekend, Jason made breakfast. He took them to the park. He helped with homework. He read bedtime stories. It was exhausting, but it was also wonderful. On Sunday, Jason brought them back to Abella's house. "Did they behave?" Abella asked. "They were perfect." Marcus hugged Jason. "Can we come back next weekend?" "Not next weekend, but soon." After the children went inside, Abella stood on the porch with Jason. "Thank you for taking care of them." "You don't have to thank me. They're my children." "I know, but 6 months ago, I never thought this would be possible." "Neither did I." They stood in comfortable silence. "Jason, I need to tell you something. Okay? I don't hate you anymore." Jason looked at her in surprise. "You don't?" "No, I'm still angry about the past. I probably always will be. But I don't hate you. You've proven yourself. You show up. You're becoming a good father." "Thank you, Abella. Don't mess it up." "I won't." One Saturday in September, Margaret invited everyone to her house in Cherry Hill. Abella, Dorothy, and the children came. It was the first time Abella and Dorothy saw Margaret's new house. "This is beautiful," Abella said. The house was not as big as the penthouse, but it was warm. It had a real backyard with grass and trees. The swing set stood in the corner. The children ran outside immediately. They played on the swings. They ran around the yard. Margaret prepared lunch. Simple sandwiches and fruit. Nothing fancy. They all ate together at the dining table. It was a normal family meal. They talked about school and work. They laughed at the children's stories. After lunch, Margaret showed Abella and Dorothy around the house. "This is the children's room," Margaret said. She opened a door. Inside was a bedroom filled with toys, books, and 3 small beds. "You made them a room?" Abella asked. "Yes, for when they sleep over." "Margaret, this is—" Abella did not finish her sentence, but her expression was softer than Margaret had ever seen. That evening, as everyone prepared to leave, Zoe hugged Margaret tightly. "I love you, Grandma Maggie." Margaret knelt down and hugged her granddaughter. "I love you too, sweetheart." It was the first time Margaret said those words in years. After everyone left, Margaret sat in her living room. She looked at the photos on the wall. Pictures of the children. Pictures of the family. 1 year ago she had everything. Money, power, respect. But she was alone. Now she had less money, no power, a damaged reputation. But she had family. And family was everything. December arrived quickly. The year had passed fast. Margaret could barely believe how much had changed. It was December 31st again. Exactly 1 year since the New Year's Eve party that destroyed and rebuilt her life. Margaret stood in her kitchen in Cherry Hill. She was preparing food for a small celebration. Not 50 guests, not expensive catered food. Just family. Jason arrived first. He carried bags of groceries. "I brought everything you asked for," Jason said. "Thank you. Can you start setting the table?" Jason smiled, his mother asking him to set a table. A year ago, she had staff for everything. Now she did things herself. At 5 o'clock, Abella arrived with Marcus, Elijah, and Zoe. Dorothy came with them. The children ran inside. They were wearing matching sweaters that Dorothy knitted for them. "Grandma Maggie!" all 3 shouted together. Margaret hugged each child. She had learned to hug easily now. A year ago she was stiff and awkward. Now it felt natural. "Go wash your hands," Margaret said. "Dinner is almost ready." The children ran to the bathroom. Abella and Dorothy came into the kitchen. "Can I help with anything?" Abella asked. "You can finish the salad." "Dorothy, can you get drinks for everyone?" They worked together in the kitchen. The 3 women moved around each other comfortably. This would have been impossible a year ago. Dinner was simple: roasted chicken, vegetables, rice, and salad. Margaret cooked it herself. It was not perfect, but it was made with love. They all sat at the dining table. The children talked about their day. Marcus told a story about school. Elijah showed everyone a drawing he made. Zoe sang a song she learned. Margaret watched and listened. She smiled. Real, genuine smiles. After dinner, Margaret stood up. "I want us to do something. Let's go around the table. Each person says what they're grateful for." "I'll go first," Zoe said. "I'm grateful for my family and for Grandma's pancakes." Everyone laughed. Elijah went next. "I'm grateful for my new fire trucks and for Daddy taking us to the park." Marcus was more serious. "I'm grateful that I have a daddy now and that Grandma Maggie teaches me about my heritage." Dorothy said, "I'm grateful for healing. I'm grateful my daughter found peace." Abella was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I'm grateful my children are happy. I'm grateful they know their father and grandmother. I'm grateful for this family. broken as it is. Jason spoke next. His voice was thick with emotion. I'm grateful for second chances. I'm grateful I get to be a father. I'm grateful my children forgive me even though I don't deserve it. Everyone looked at Margaret. She took a deep breath. I'm grateful I didn't miss the rest of their lives. I spent 72 years building walls. It took 3 5-year-olds to tear them down. I lost 1 year with them, but I have all the years ahead. Zoe got up from her chair and hugged Margaret. Don't be sad, Grandma. I'm not sad, sweetheart. These are happy tears. After dinner, they moved to the living room. The children wanted to watch a movie. They picked an animated film about talking animals. Marcus sat next to Margaret on the sofa. He leaned against her shoulder. Margaret put her arm around him. Halfway through the movie, Elijah fell asleep on Jason's lap. Zoe curled up between Abella and Dorothy. This was family. Simple and real and perfect. At 11:30, Margaret gently woke the children. Come on, let's go outside. It's almost midnight. They all went to the backyard. Margaret had bought fireworks, small, safe ones for the children. At midnight, Jason and Margaret lit the fireworks. Colors filled the dark sky. Red, blue, green, gold. The children cheered and pointed. It's so pretty, Zoe shouted. Margaret held Zoe's hand. She watched the fireworks reflect in her granddaughter's eyes. She felt Marcus standing next to her. She heard Elijah laughing. 1 year ago at midnight, Margaret's life fell apart in front of 50 guests. She felt shame and anger. Now, at midnight, her life was coming together with only family. She felt peace and love. Jason stood next to his mother. He put his arm around her shoulders. Happy New Year, Mom. Happy New Year, Jason. Thank you for changing, for trying, for being here. Margaret could not speak. She just squeezed her son's hand. Abella watched them from across the yard. She stood with Dorothy. The two women had their arms linked. A year ago, I wanted to destroy them, Abella said quietly. I wanted them to hurt like they hurt me. And now? Dorothy asked. Now, I just want my children to be happy. And they are happy. Are you happy? Abella thought about this. I'm not angry anymore. That's close to happy. After the fireworks ended, they went back inside. The children were tired, but fighting sleep. They wanted to stay up longer. It's way past bedtime, Abella said. But we're at Grandma's house, Zoe protested. That doesn't mean you don't need sleep. Margaret had prepared the children's room. 3 small beds with clean sheets. She gave each child their pajamas. Marcus, Elijah, and Zoe brushed their teeth and changed into pajamas. Margaret read them a bedtime story. It was a book about a dragon who learned to be brave. All 3 children fell asleep before the story ended. Margaret kissed each child's forehead. She turned off the light and left the door open slightly. The adults sat in the living room. It was 1 o'clock in the morning. They drank tea and talked quietly. This time last year, everything was different, Jason said. Everything, Abella agreed. Margaret looked at Abella. Thank you for giving me this chance. I know I didn't deserve it. No, you didn't, Abella said honestly. But those kids deserve to know you. So I let go of some of my anger. Not all of it, but enough. I will spend the rest of my life making it up to all of you. I know you will. Dorothy yawned. I'm too old to stay up this late. Where am I sleeping? Guest room down the hall, Margaret said. Jason, you're in the other guest room. Where will you sleep? Jason asked his mother. On the sofa. It's comfortable. Abella looked surprised. Margaret, don't sleep on the sofa. I'll sleep there. You sleep in your own bed. No, you're my guest. You get the bed. They argued about this for a few minutes. Finally, they decided to both sleep in Margaret's room. It had a large bed. They could share it. This would have been unthinkable a year ago. Everyone went to sleep around 2 o'clock in the morning. Margaret lay in bed next to Abella. Both women stared at the ceiling in the dark. "Margaret?" Abella said quietly. "Yes?" "I don't forgive you yet, just so you know." "I understand. But I see you trying. I see you changing. That matters." "Thank you." They lay in silence for a while. "The kids love you," Abella said, "especially Zoe. She talks about you constantly." Margaret felt tears in her eyes. "I love them more than I ever thought possible." "Keep showing them that. Keep being present." "I will. I promise." Both women fell asleep. The next morning, January 1st, Margaret woke up early. She went to the kitchen and started making pancakes. She burned the first batch, but the second batch was perfect. The children woke up and smelled food. They came to the kitchen in their pajamas. Their hair was messy. Their eyes were sleepy. "Good morning, Grandma," they said together. Everyone gathered for breakfast. They ate pancakes with syrup and fruit. The children talked about their plans for the new year. "I want to learn to ride a bike," Marcus said. "I want to learn to swim," Elijah said. "I want to draw 100 pictures," Zoe said. "Those are good goals," Jason said. "I'll help you with all of them." After breakfast, Jason suggested going to the park. The weather was cold but sunny. Everyone agreed. They dressed warmly. They walked together to a park 2 blocks away. The park had swings and slides. The children ran ahead. The adults walked slowly behind them. Margaret walked between Abella and Dorothy. Jason walked next to them. They looked like a normal family. A grandmother, a mother, a father, and 3 children. People in the park would never know their complicated history. Marcus ran back to Margaret. "Grandma, can we come back next weekend?" "Of course. You can come every weekend if you want." "Even when it's not Saturday?" "Even when it's not Saturday." Marcus smiled and ran back to his siblings. Zoe took Margaret's hand. They walked together toward the playground. Margaret looked at the small hand in hers. So tiny, so trusting. 1 year ago, Margaret had everything. A penthouse worth millions. A company. Power. Respect. But she was completely alone. Now she had a modest house, no company position, a damaged reputation, less money. But she had Marcus, Elijah, and Zoe. She had Jason trying to be a better man. She had Abella slowly letting go of anger. She had Dorothy's cautious acceptance. She had family. Margaret realized something important. Love is not about control. Love is not about power or money or status. Love is about showing up. Love is about change. Love is about choosing people over pride. She spent 72 years building walls around her heart. She thought those walls protected her. But they only made her lonely. Her grandchildren tore down those walls without even trying. They just loved her, purely and simply. And that love changed everything. Zoe pulled Margaret toward the swings. "Push me, Grandma!" Margaret pushed Zoe on the swing, higher and higher. Zoe laughed with pure joy. Marcus and Elijah played on the slide. Jason stood at the bottom to catch them. Abella and Dorothy sat on a bench nearby talking. The sun shone down. The air was cold but fresh. Children's laughter filled the park. Margaret looked at her family. Imperfect, complicated, broken in places, but together. And that was everything. If you enjoyed today's video, I'm sure you'll love the next one. Don't waste time. Just click on the screen.